I mean, it's nothing like this has ever happened. It's a very scary time. It's a very scary time if you care about free speech.
Of course, it wasn't my finest moment, and I definitely don't advocate violence or burning anything down or anything of the sort. To be honest, it was emotion. Does that make sense? I don't know what was going on. I was just so upset and so angry and just thinking to myself, when will this stop? I was just anger, and just, I wasn't thinking rationally.
Something unbelievable has just happened inside Reform UK, the party that once promised to be the defender of free speech, the voice of ordinary Britons, and the only true alternative to the failed by the establishment. In a move that has stunned supporters, shaken the foundations of its credibility, and left people questioning if the party has already lost its way, Reform UK has chosen to punish its own councillors not for corruption, not for abusing power, not for pocketing taxpayer money, but for a single act, sharing a post linked to Tommy Robinson. Yes, you heard that right. The very party built on fighting censorship and standing up for freedom of expression has now fallen into the same trap as the establishment it claimed to oppose. And make no mistake, this moment could go down as Reform UK's biggest mistake, yet a shocking betrayal that has sent shockwaves across Britain. Reform UK was born out of frustration with a political class that silences dissent, censors speech and crushes anyone who dares to challenge the status quo. Nigel Farage and Richard Tice both carved out their reputations by speaking truths that the mainstream parties were too afraid to touch. Their promise was simple: to defend ordinary people, to be the antidote to Labour and Conservative weakness, and above all, to stand firm on free speech. But now the party has taken a decision so reckless, so hypocritical, that it risks tearing apart everything it has built. The announcement that Reform UK councillors could face suspension simply for sharing a Tommy Robinson post has left supporters in disbelief. It is not about whether one agrees with Robinson's every word. It is about the principle, the right to share, to engage, to speak freely without fear of punishment. Reform UK promised to fight for that principle, yet here they are enforcing the very censorship they once condemned. Think about this clearly. Reform UK did not say they would suspend councillors for financial misconduct, for bringing the party into disrepute through criminal behaviour, or for betraying voters by switching sides. No, their red line is whether a councillor shares a post from a man who, whether you like him or not, represents one of the largest grassroots movements for free expression Britain has ever seen. The irony could not be greater. A party founded on opposing authoritarianism is now mirroring the tactics of those it claims to fight. Labour silences dissenters by branding them far right. The Conservatives sidestep free speech debates altogether by staying silent. And now Reform UK has chosen to silence its own people, aligning itself with the very forces its supporters joined to resist. This move reveals a deeper problem within Reform. It shows fear. Fear of media backlash, fear of being labelled, fear of losing the approval of the establishment they once proudly rejected. But here is the truth. The people who support Reform UK are not looking for a watered-down, apologetic version of Labour or the Conservatives. They are looking for courage. They are looking for a party that stands firm when the media attacks, that refuses to cave under pressure, and that will not betray its principles for the sake of temporary approval. And in this moment, Reform UK has shown the exact opposite. They have shown weakness, hypocrisy and cowardice. It is not just a small misstep. This decision strikes at the very heart of what Reform UK claims to stand for. Free speech is not about defending what is safe, comfortable or popular. Free speech is about protecting the voices that challenge, that provoke, that question. By punishing councillors for engaging with Tommy Robinson, Reform UK has sent a chilling message. Not all voices are welcome. Not all opinions are safe, and not even their own members are free to decide for themselves. This is not defending liberty. It is policing thought. It is a betrayal so deep that even loyal supporters are now wondering if the party has already lost the very soul that set it apart. And this is where the danger truly lies, because once a party starts caving to the establishment's rules, once it begins to punish its own people to avoid being called names, there is no stopping where it ends. Today, it is Tommy Robinson. Tomorrow, it will be someone else. Eventually, Reform will be indistinguishable from the very parties it was meant to replace. And when that day comes, the people will not forgive them. They will walk away, and Reform UK will collapse, not because Labour or the Conservatives defeated them, but because they destroyed themselves. The fallout from this shocking move is already beginning to spread, and the cracks inside Reform UK are becoming impossible to ignore. Supporters who once saw the party as their last hope against censorship and political conformity are now asking themselves whether they have been deceived. Social media platforms which should have been celebrating Reform as the voice for free expression are instead flooded with anger, confusion and betrayal. Formerly loyal voters are declaring that the party has abandoned its mission, with many accusing Reform of becoming just another puppet of the establishment. And the worst part for Reform is that this isn't an attack from Labour, the Conservatives, or the mainstream media. This is outrage from their very own base, the ordinary Britons who believed Reform would finally give them a voice. At the heart of the storm lies the fundamental question of what Reform UK actually stands for. If a party built on the principle of free speech cannot defend even the right of its councillors to engage with controversial figures, then what credibility does it have left? Reform was supposed to be the party that didn't bend, the party that didn't play by the establishment's rules, the party that stood firm when others cowered. Yet by drawing a line at Tommy Robinson, the party has proven that its commitment to free speech has limits. And once limits are introduced, the principle itself is dead. The public knows this instinctively. They understand that free speech is not about convenience, but about principle. They understand that once a party starts deciding which voices are allowed and which are forbidden, then it is no longer a champion of freedom, but just another gatekeeper of acceptable opinion. And they also know that a gatekeeper, no matter how loudly it shouts about liberty, is no different from the establishment it claims to oppose. This is why the sense of betrayal cuts so deeply. Reform UK did not rise to prominence because it was perfect. It rose because it was bold, because it dared to say what others wouldn't, and because it refused to play by the rules of polite, sanitised politics. The party was a lifeline for people who felt voiceless, ignored and dismissed by the mainstream. But now with this decision, Reform has shown that it is willing to play the very same game it once condemned. By sacrificing its councillors on the altar of political correctness, the party has admitted that it fears the backlash of being associated with Tommy Robinson more than it values the loyalty of its supporters. And that is a grave mistake, because the people who turn to Reform are not afraid of being called names. They are not afraid of controversy. They are not afraid of uncomfortable truths. They are afraid of betrayal, and that is exactly what they feel now. The establishment knows this. Labour and the Conservatives will watch this chaos with satisfaction, because they know that when Reform UK weakens itself, their own power becomes stronger. By caving in to the same fear-mongering tactics that have defined the political elite for decades, Reform has given its enemies exactly what they wanted, proof that even the so-called rebels cannot resist the pressure to conform. Every time Reform suspends a councillor for daring to share a post, Labour will use it as ammunition to argue that even Reform agrees Tommy Robinson must be silenced. Every time Reform apologises or retreats from controversy, the Conservatives will seize the moment to say that Reform is not a serious alternative, but just a noisy distraction. In other words, Reform's enemies do not need to destroy the party because Reform is doing it for them. And yet the greatest danger is not what happens outside the party, but what is happening within it. Trust is fragile. Once broken, it rarely returns. By turning its back on its own members, Reform risks alienating the very people who work tirelessly on the ground, knocking on doors, campaigning and spreading the message. These councillors and activists are not establishment politicians. They are ordinary people who believed in something bigger than themselves, who sacrificed time, money and energy to build Reform into a movement. To punish them for something as trivial as sharing a post is not only unfair, It is insulting. It tells them that their loyalty is expendable, that their freedom of thought is conditional, and that their voices can be silenced at the whim of party leaders. And once those people walk away, reform will have nothing left but empty slogans and a hollow shell of what it once promised to be. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of all this is the precedent it sets. If Reform UK is willing to punish its own for engaging with Tommy Robinson, then what else might it punish them for tomorrow? Where does it end? Today it is Robinson. Tomorrow it could be criticising the leadership. The next day, it could be questioning policy. Once you normalise censorship within your own ranks, it becomes a tool of control, a weapon against dissent, a means of ensuring obedience rather than encouraging debate. That is not the mark of a free and democratic party. That is the mark of an organisation sliding into authoritarianism, the very thing it claimed to resist. And make no mistake, the people see this. They are not blind. They are not naive. They understand that this is not about Tommy Robinson. It is about whether Reform UK is truly different from the establishment or just another mask for the same authoritarian impulse. And unless Reform can prove otherwise, it risks being remembered not as the party that defended freedom, but as the party that betrayed it at the very moment it mattered most. The deeper we look into this crisis, the clearer it becomes that Reform UK has walked straight into a trap of its own making. The party that promised to fight censorship is now enforcing censorship. The movement that vowed to break free from establishment control is now copying the same authoritarian tactics it once condemned. This is not just hypocrisy, it is political suicide unfolding in real time. Supporters who once filled halls, streets and online forums with excitement for a new kind of politics now feel as though the rug has been pulled out from beneath them. And the timing of this blunder makes it even worse. Britain is standing at a crossroads. Public anger at Labour's economic failures is growing. Frustration with Conservative weakness is reaching breaking point. People are desperate for an alternative. Reform UK should be rising. Instead, it is collapsing under the weight of its own cowardice. For months, Reform leaders have presented themselves as fearless defenders of ordinary people. They position themselves as the antidote to what they called woke authoritarianism, promising to defend those who had been silenced, shamed, or ostracised by the mainstream. But with this move, the mask has slipped. The party has revealed that when push comes to shove, it values the approval of the media and political elites more than the loyalty of its supporters. It is a betrayal on par with the broken promises of the Conservatives after Brexit, or Labour's betrayal of working class voters. Supporters now see the truth. Reform UK, the so-called outsider party, has chosen to become an insider, desperate for respectability from the same establishment it once mocked. And respectability is a poison. Because the moment you chase it, you begin to compromise, you begin to fold, and before long, you are no different from the very people you once swore to replace. This decision is not simply about councillors and Tommy Robinson. It cuts to the very heart of Britain's political future. If Reform UK cannot be trusted to defend free speech within its own ranks, how can it be trusted to defend it nationally? If it collapses under the weight of a media storm over a Facebook share, how could it ever withstand the ferocious pressure of governing? This is the question echoing through Reform's base right now. People are realising that they place their hopes in a party that is not as strong as it claimed to be. And once that realisation takes root, it spreads like wildfire. The moment doubt sets in, the movement begins to fracture. The passionate volunteers who once campaigned tirelessly now hesitate. The donors who once poured in their money begin to pull back. And the voters who once pledged their loyalty start looking elsewhere for leadership. The establishment thrives on fear, and it is fear that has driven Reform into this disastrous position. Fear of being branded far right, fear of being linked to Tommy Robinson, fear of losing the mainstream approval it craves. But here's the truth. Reform was never meant to win over the establishment. It was meant to challenge it. It was meant to represent the millions who have been dismissed, ignored and silenced by a political class that mocks them at every turn. And yet now, instead of defending those people, Reform has chosen to punish its own representatives for doing exactly what it promised to protect, speaking freely. This is not strength, this is surrender. And history has shown time and time again that no movement survives once it begins to surrender its principles. Consider the symbolism of what is happening here. In George Orwell's 1984, people were not punished for crimes, but for thoughts, for ideas, for daring to question the official narrative. Today, Reform UK has imposed its own version of thought crime. A councillor who shares a post from Tommy Robinson, no matter how minor, no matter the context, is deemed unacceptable, punished not for corruption or misconduct, but for a thought, for an idea, for daring to cross an invisible line drawn not by voters, but by elites. This is exactly what Reform was created to resist, and yet here they are enforcing it. It is not just an embarrassment, it is a betrayal of Orwell's warning, a confirmation that Britain is sliding faster than ever into a society where freedom of thought and speech are luxuries, not rights. And the British people are not blind to this. They see the cracks, they see the weakness, they see that Reform, instead of standing tall and saying, we will not bow to the establishment, has chosen to kneel. And once you kneel, the establishment never lets you stand back up. Every future decision will now be haunted by this moment. Every pledge, every speech, every policy will be met with one question. If Reform cannot even defend its own members' right to share a post, what else will it compromise on? Will it compromise on immigration, on taxation, on Brexit, on everything that matters to the people who trusted them? These are the doubts that will now hang over the party, casting a shadow it may never escape from. But perhaps the gravest danger of all is what this means for Britain's political landscape. If Reform fails, if it betrays its principles and collapses, then the people will be left with no true alternative. Labour and the Conservatives have already abandoned free speech. The Liberal Democrats and Greens never fought for it in the first place. If Reform joins them in silencing voices, then Britain faces a future with no party willing to defend the most fundamental liberty of all. And when that happens, the country will slide even faster into the abyss of censorship, control and authoritarianism. Reform's mistake, therefore, is not just a betrayal of its supporters, it is a betrayal of the entire nation. A moment that could echo for generations as the point where Britain's last chance for political freedom was lost.